we're working on a 2-year campaign to get more people, young people from diverse backgrounds, into green jobs for nature. Because at the moment, they don't think that there's a space for them there. And that's essentially the same thing as saying, I don't see that there's a space for me in the future, because these jobs are preserving the land, preserving our future. It's so much deeper than just a job.
Global Socialpreneurs is brought to you in part by Positive Talk Radio, KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle. Check them out at www.positivetalkradio.net.
Welcome to Global Socialpreneurs, a one-of-a-kind talk show showcasing expert social entrepreneurs. Learn their stories and their secrets to creating a sustainable impact. Now, here is your host, social entrepreneur Anne Scotland.
Welcome. I'm so glad you're all here again today. Thank you for joining us here on Global Socialpreneurs. We have an exciting guest for you today. And what this show is about, if you're new, is increasing the dialogue around social entrepreneurship on a global scale. We are talking to people from all over the world, socialpreneurs and other experts who help us understand the value of social entrepreneurship locally, regionally, and globally, and give you amazing stories about how you can become a social entrepreneur. And almost everyone could be one. I say everyone could be one, especially these days where we all seems to have multiple jobs or responsibilities anyway. And we can really make an impact in this way. So we have a really fun community. Our forum at Global Socialpreneurs is a great event that you would love to join, our monthly event. And you can check that out on our website. So we are going to get started, and I'm going to introduce you today to our special guest. Her name is Sophie Lee. She's a social entrepreneur. She's an award-winning journalist and founder and director of Electric Peach, which is a name I love, by the way. Electric Peach supports systemic social change campaigns for social enterprises and B Corps and others, helping them to turn their cause and purpose into a movement. So it's all about communication and having a powerful message. Sophie's mission is to help visionaries and change makers grow their brands through impossible to ignore brand experiences, which I think is amazing. I want to be impossible to ignore, and through storytelling. And she was named one to watch on the Social Entrepreneur Index in 2023. So please help me welcome Sophie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Sophie. How are you today?
I am very well, thank you very much. And hello all the way from York in the UK.
Amazing.
It's so dark in York in the UK.
Oh, yeah, right. It's just dark. So happy that you're here today, and technology or otherwise. I'm excited to have you and to hear your message of what you've been doing. So right away, I just like to ask people, like, in your opinion, Sophie, what is it about social entrepreneurship that makes it a powerful tool for change?
I believe so strongly that businesses have to be the change that we need to see in the world. If you look at literally every single issue that we have globally, you can trace them all back to the behavior of business. And I'm a big believer, if business is the problem, then it must also be the solution. So for me, social entrepreneurship is using our power, using our influence, using our ability to make money, and giving it back and using it as a powerful tool for change in whatever area we feel most passionately about. And for me, that really is like the most important and impactful way that we can create change on a global level at scale. So these kind of conversations, they're not just, I hear it a lot because I've been in this world for a long time. I hear this kind of idea of that this is a really fluffy conversation. And to me, it's like it is vital. It's vital and it's commercially sensible.
I love that. I love that so much. You're on the Social Entrepreneurs Index as one to watch. Tell us a little bit more about what you were building and how that caught their attention.
Sure. So Electric Peach is a brand storytelling and experience agency, and we focus on helping businesses to amplify their impact And we do that by working with them to use communication as a tool to enroll more people in their vision and galvanize them to action. We also have a social enterprise element of that, whereby we work with artists and activists to help us to tell these stories, and we help to train them to be more impactful in their communication. I'm a communicator by trade, and so I'm really, really passionate about communication as the mouthpiece of change. And I have a really strong belief that there is no problem that can't be resolved through communication. So I guess that's what caught their attention. But I think also the fact that we work with such incredible brands and incredible leaders who are also social entrepreneurs, and kind of have our fingers in lots of different pies in that respect, that a lot of our clients were also on that list. So I think that's probably where they also heard about me.
Amazing. So you built a social entrepreneurship even before you started Electric Peach. And what was that?
We're talking about, which one are we talking about? I've done quite a few ones.
I don't know. I know there was one, and I think I looked you up on the directory, and they had you listed under a different company name. And I figured that was from
again, it's the fingers; they're in all of the pies. So I'm on the board of non-executive director for the Organisation for Responsible Business in the UK, which is the kind of key organisation that brings together micro businesses who are all committed to doing good for social change. My business was previously called The Joyful, which is what it was called when I was on the index. But we've recently gone through a rebrand to Electric Peach. So I'm so thrilled that you like the name.
I do. Where did that come from? I have to ask.
So there is a poem by T.S. Eliot called The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And there is a line in that poem, which is, "Do I dare to eat a peach?" And I have been guided by that line for most of my adult life. And for me, every time that I get afraid to do something, I remind myself, like, yes, I do dare to eat a peach. So I'm also a burlesque dancer, and my burlesque name is around peaches. And so I've kind of become known for peaches, and Electric Peach just stands out, I think.
That's amazing. No, I love all of that. And also something I was going to ask, I forgot to mention before, was you have a designation after your name, which probably a lot of British people know, but a lot of Americans and others might not, which is FRSA. What is that? Sophie Lee, FRSA.
So that stands for the Fellowship of the Royal Society of Arts, which is basically, it's a social entrepreneur's paradise, especially if you care about the arts and you care about bringing creativity into how you're driving change. And the RSA are all about change makers. I actually did a talk for them on Friday about storytelling for change. And they've been around for hundreds of years, and they've gone through so many different iterations. But it's really exciting to me that they've created this incredible community in the UK of people like us who want to use creativity and have fun, but also really do something and leave a legacy in the world.
That's amazing. I love that. And congratulations, because I know that's a very coveted designation, and you totally deserve having that with all the work you've put in, especially around impact projects and businesses. Another thing I was going to ask is, you said you were really passionate about helping make marginalized leaders, and I love that, marginalized leaders and impact groups, marginalized impact groups, impossible to ignore. Love that. So what is a piece of advice you could offer social entrepreneurs about developing unshakable messages that will help get them noticed?
I think the unshakable part comes to you as the leader. Like, you have to be unshakable, because you're going to come up against resistance. If you have a message that's important enough that it needs to be said in such a way that it drives you to create your entire world around it, which to me is what social entrepreneurship is, then there is a reason why it is so important to you. And usually that reason why is because it goes against the status quo, because you've looked around and you've seen the world isn't working, or this little piece of the world isn't working, or my community isn't working, or people are being whatever, subjugated, what have you, whatever it might be. The planet is suffering. And there is going to be people who don't like that. So the first thing is you have to be unshakable in your message, in your belief in why you are doing what you're doing. And then you find the people around you who also are unshakable, who can hold you when you do inevitably have that moment of like, why am I doing this? And just wanting to shut yourself back up again. That's the first stage. And then becoming impossible to ignore is really about having that really clear message, talking about the thing that nobody wants to talk about, like not just blending in and blanding yourself to fit in, really going there and being authentic and honest and powerful in what you're fighting for, because it is a fight actually. And I think it's as kind of dramatic as that for a lot of people. And then it's about how you communicate that. So really inviting people in. I don't mean going out there and like being aggressive in your messaging, but being really powerful and standing in your power in your messaging, and then saying it over and over and over again in as many different ways as you can, so that you become known as the person who stands for what you stand for, and become impossible to ignore by just never shutting up about it, and like being as much as you possibly can in as many places as you can. For me personally, like I am just naturally a very vibrant person. So that is what I bring to it. It's a lot of kind of playful language and bright colors, and you can't see it right now, but like a real brightness. That's not for everybody. So it really is about finding what works for you. And when you find what works for you and you become unshakable in your, I'm going to put myself out there and for this cause, and keep doing it, it's amazing what happens, because the right people start to drop into your field. And I mean, Anne, like you dropping into my field, and it's incredible what can happen when you do that. So that's really what I mean. It's a process, and it starts from within, and then it's really about how you communicate yourself in the right places, in the way that works best for you.
That's wonderful and so beautifully said. And I loved what you said about it really allows you to be yourself and bring that to the picture and stop pretending to be someone that you aren't. And even a shy person gets excited about something. So find that thing that gets you really excited, something that can make an impact in the world, and just kind of let your light shine. So what events in your own life, though, led you to do this work? Because I think you had, all your businesses is about helping people become visible. Was being visible something you always enjoyed?
I went through a bit of a process with that. When I was very young, I was very much like happy to be visible. I used to sing, the song, This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to let it shine. I used to sing that all the time, anyone that could watch it. And now I sing it to myself, because I think that what you've just said is so key. It's about finding your own light and letting it shine, and not letting anyone else try to dim that light, or yourself try to dim that light. But I went through quite a lot of quite extreme childhood trauma, and through that process, shut myself down and developed chronic clinical depression from a very young age that took me to some very dark places, and took me down the route of severe drink and drugs use and misuse, and found myself in toxic relationships and in all kinds of really, really horrible places. And as a result of that, I really lost connection with myself, with my purpose, with my story, with my right to have a voice and right to have a story. And in the process of recovery has been about coming back to that, reclaiming my voice, reclaiming my story, not letting myself shame myself for what I now understand is a very natural and normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. And through that process of recovery, I've also met many other people in recovery who have found their voice and their story, and through sharing their story have helped so many other people. And I think that was where it came from for me, was just realizing how powerful our stories are and how we can connect with each other. Even when we have no other thing in common with each other, we can connect on our experience of being human. And the more that we allow ourselves to share that, vulnerably share that, the more we open ourselves up to that connection, and the more that we give other people permission to do the same and to be themselves, free from the shame and the stigma and the expectations that society puts on all of us, and it makes all of us miserable. So I think it's a really fundamentally important part of healing. Any of us, we've all got wounds. It's a really beautiful way of healing those wounds.
I love that. And, I know we've shared a little bit before, both having stories of an unusual or difficult background, and yet coming away with that with a deep, deep desire to bring joy to others. My book's called Live for Joy. So when you told me your company previously had the word joy, I was like, this is amazing. Bringing joy to others, bringing healing, bringing hope as our life commitment, as our life journey. And I think one of the things that clearly you have had to overcome, and so have I, is the willingness to even tell our story, the willingness to sort of share those somewhat embarrassing or uncomfortable or moments that don't make us look like we're always in the best light, and sharing those. It's so important, because people always tell me, I'm so grateful that you shared. The more we share, the more others are willing to share, the more we're able to support each other and help one another and empathize. Because, if a celebrity looks like they have an absolutely perfect life, I'm not a celebrity, but if a celebrity looks like they have an absolutely perfect life, and they're doing amazing things, but no one really grasps where they've come from, what they've worked through, the addictions, the relationships, the physical, mental, emotional challenges that they have had to overcome to get where they are, then the person who's in a time of struggle feels like, well, I could never do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the greatest pieces of bringing social entrepreneurship into the conversation is, let's get real, let's help real people, and let's be real and say, like, hey, we all have so many challenges, and yet you can live your life purposefully. So it makes me really excited that that's what you've been doing. And what is it about being a social entrepreneur that most inspires you personally, like wakes you up in the morning?
The thing that I get the most joy from is facilitating the moment for other people when they realize that they have already got within them everything that they need to create impact. And it always starts from within. So first impact within our own lives, and then how that radiates out. That kind of, like, Oprah calls it an aha moment, that moment where you're like, aha, like, oh my gosh, maybe I am capable and worthy and all of these things that I've been telling myself for such a long time that I'm not. So that really drives me up from a leadership perspective, like that. I love that. From a commercial perspective, what drives me is the ability, the privilege. Like, I am privileged because I have access to communities and opportunities and money that I know that very, very few people have that same privilege. And so I take that privilege very seriously. And I will always, and I'm so proud of running a business where last year we donated 27% of our revenue to organizations that we believe in. And we will always do that, because that is something that I feel like I have a privilege, and I want to make sure that I'm sharing that. I really believe in shared wealth as a kind of global structure. And then also when I'm working with organizations who are up to something really, really important. For example, at the moment, we're working with the Chartered Institute of Environmental and Eco Management in the UK, and they represent people who work with the environment, which is such a white middle class industry. And that is a huge problem because it's a problem for so many reasons. I don't have to go into why it is, but it's a huge problem. And we're working on a 2-year campaign to get more people, young people from diverse backgrounds, into green jobs for nature. Because at the moment, they don't think that there's a space for them there. And that's essentially the same thing as saying, I don't see that there's a space for me in the future, because these jobs are preserving the land, preserving our future. It's so much deeper than just a job. And I feel extremely grateful that I get to have the opportunity to get inside these people's worlds, understand what's holding them back and why, understand where the problem in the industry is, and create communication that bridges that gap and actually changes something, moves something forward in some way. And that is what drives me from a professional perspective.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that, because I think it has to be personal. And what makes social entrepreneurship for me different from regular enterprise, which, I also did in the past, is regular enterprise was the bottom line. The only purpose in most cases was to make a profit. But it wasn't necessarily a profit with an intent towards impact. That's the difference. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. This is why this show is about social entrepreneurship instead of only traditional non-for-profit organizations, because there's many non-for-profit organizations, but we're trying to increase this conversation around a for-profit model because it's effective, it's efficient, it's motivating. The people working it, like you and I, get paid. The people participating have a benefit educationally or informationally. And then there's even more people who benefit from the percentage of profits that we donate. So it's an opportunity where everyone can get involved, and we lead by example. Because I volunteered for many, many years. I can't even tell you, the thousands of hours that I've never, obviously never been paid for because it was volunteering. But then you're also in that challenge of, everything is, I have to work for free so someone can get something for free. And what about I work for a moderate income? I lead by example so that another person at the end of that line can learn to work for a moderate income, learn to help be self-sufficient, learn to help support the economy in their local community. Those are the pieces that make it replicable and sustainable. And even though it's still extremely hard work, at least as hard, if not harder than a regular entrepreneurship, if you will, then it has that level of satisfaction that you're actually changing our planet forever by teaching your colleagues and the new generation a new paradigm for doing things.
Yeah, and it's a much more empowering structure. I think you could ask, and if they were being honest, you could ask any even C-suite person, especially women, especially if they managed to even get that to that point, women of color, like, it's like, ask them, was your job satisfying? Like, you might have been making loads and loads of money, but you had to go through the most toxic systems to get there. And so, like, part of it is about redefining the systems in which we work, making sure that all people have access to opportunities, and that we break down these barriers, and that we break down these ceilings, because it's utterly mind-blowing that this still exists in 2023. And then also that we're considering every single part of the chain. Like, we're considering our supply chain. We're not saying, well, it's fine to use slave labor several points down the chain because it saves me money here. We're saying, like, no, every single impact matters. And then we're saying, well, how we treat our employees, our teams matter. How we treat the environment around us matters. It's like, it's the most conscious and considerate way that you can grow business. And it has to be the future of business. I think that's really, for me, the point of it is the way that businesses are running is it's not even that it's unacceptable, because this isn't necessarily even a moral conversation. It's unsustainable. There is no there is an end point to this, and it will come soon. And I think that's the point. Like, it's, for me, I would love there to be more of a conversation around this, because it is actually a solution that will help everybody, and including deal with the climate crisis. It's like it's every part of it comes into this.
Yes.
And I think you're absolutely right. Like, I definitely don't think we need to be so afraid of making money, because with money we can do more.
Yeah, I think, that's going to be one of the big challenges, as we encourage even organizations, companies, enterprises that are already established in a traditional way to pivot into a social entrepreneurship or into a social enterprise, which is, that's something we're hoping to create a groundwork for, a system that people and companies can follow to accomplish that. So sometimes it's not super simple. It might be a little simpler in some ways in the US because it's a little clearer. There's just nonprofit and there's regular for-profit, in the sense of it's a little grayer in the UK system. Like basically even a social entrepreneurship still falls under a nonprofit category. So things haven't quite evolved fully to like where there is a distinction. But I think helping individuals and companies understand the value of being ethical and why it's not sustainable to keep people, as you said, essentially working in slave labor, whether that was, seamstresses and children in Sri Lanka, or whether that was tomato growers in Florida who were undocumented immigrants and were severely abused and severely underpaid and still would do it just to survive. How do we convince people and companies that there's more at stake than this year's bottom line? Because everyone's always like, but this year, and our stockholders now, and our investors now, and we have to prove this on our reports. What are some of the ways that we might be able to appeal to them to be a little bit more courageous in their business?
I feel like we probably can't. In terms of the moral side of things, we have to present a business case. That's the only way that that's going to work. The one thing B Corp and Electric Peach as a B Corp movement has created, because this is giving a framework, and it's not perfect, it's still in its evolution, but it's the best that we have really so far, is in the UK, when you incorporate a company, you have something called the Articles of Association. And they basically outline how you're going to run your business. And it's just the legal part of what your business is. And the legal part of any business is to protect, is to make money. That's what businesses are for. And especially when they float on the stock market, because then you've got shareholders, and that's really the whole point of it. You need to make profit for your shareholders. Otherwise they'll pull out. Your business won't survive very much longer. So I do understand from an economical perspective it seems like this is like a huge stretch. But when you become a B Corp, you change your Articles of Association to say that you will prioritize profit alongside people and planet, and you won't make choices that are for profit only and not considering those. And I think that that's what needs to happen for businesses. Like, we need to change the rules of business. It needs to be equally important to prioritize people and planet, and there needs to be like laws against it. There needs to be fines against it. There needs to be tax breaks for businesses who are doing well. There needs to be wholly better auditing going on across all of these organizations that are called out. The media needs to get on board. There are quite clear things that need to happen that would shift it. And if all of those things happened that shifted it, and also consumers were like, I'm not buying from these companies anymore until they change their ways, then they wouldn't have any choice, because they wouldn't have a business left. And I think that for a lot of these big businesses, it is going to have to come down to forcing their hand. And what is really cool about the UK is that we've got predominantly our economy is made up of small businesses. 99% of our economy is small businesses. 98% of our economy is micro businesses that employ less than 8 people. So really, in this country, we have so much power in the small business community, because if we all together made these changes, and we can, because it's a lot easier when you don't have like thousands and thousands of employees and a whole complex range of supply chains and what have you and processes, that really then puts the pressure on the big businesses to have to make those changes. And we are starting to see it. It's just not happening as quickly as I'd like it to.
Well, having it happen, having it start, getting the process rolling is part of why we do what we do, and to create awareness and understanding. So going back down the chain again, back into sort of a grassroots conversation, in your opinion, who should be a social entrepreneur?
I think anyone can be a social entrepreneur. I agree with you. I don't think anyone should be one. I think anyone can be one. I think it takes an awful lot to run a business, is what I would say. I guess it depends on what level you're looking at, because if we're looking at from a grassroots perspective, like absolutely, I think that the more that we can encourage self-employment and like give as much support to that, the better. And that you can be a social entrepreneur and just be you. And that, I think, is probably a really glorious thing as soon as you start building. I mean, I have to say my team are incredible, but building a business and hiring people is the most challenging part of growing a business in many ways. So yeah, I think anyone can do it. Maybe if you want to grow it bigger, maybe act with caution might be my takeaway. But I agree, and I love the idea that, like, you know, if you think about it, when kids, and this is I grew up half in California as well, so I feel a bit American. There's this kind of idea of like the American kid selling lemonade on the side, right, at the sidewalk. All that kid, to make that a social entrepreneur, would have to do would be to give 10% of their profits to, say in California, like there was, just as an example, it's lemonade. They know that there are people who are being taken advantage of growing lemons in a lemon farm, just as an example. Then they can say, I'm going to give some of my profit to the cause of liberating these people from this horrific experience, so that they can have their own lemon farms and they can grow their own lemons and sell their own lemons. They don't have to be, and that is how it works. And literally anyone can do that. It's just about reframing the narrative and looking for the cause that makes sense to what it is that you're doing and what you're selling.
I think reframing the narrative is so important, and even reaching children, which is one of our objectives as well, is reaching kids and teaching them a new way of thinking early on, where this is, you know, in the next 10 or 20 years, in my personal opinion, there should be no entrepreneurs. They should all be social entrepreneurs, because it's win-win. Not only are they making income, not only are they providing a service, not only are they giving, but especially when it can be tied. I love the lemonade example because it's tied, you know, to lemon producers or harvesters or whatever. So they're actually even creating in their buyer an awareness of where things come from, which I think is a huge part that both environmentally and socially we have lost. What animal has had to do for you to have meat, what a person has had to do for you to have a fruit or a vegetable, or even a packaged food. We've kind of lost that along the way. So understanding that chain is really important, and putting more emphasis back on the human instead of just the consumerism, because the only people that, you know, traditional corps have pretty much been focused on is the consumer. But what about all the people in the chain, and making that a little bit more of incorporating that into the conversation and creating more awareness? There's so many ways to do this. Well, we've run out of time already. It's amazing. It's been so much fun talking to you, Sophie, and just hearing what the work you're doing, hearing the concepts you have, hearing how your company, Electric Peach, is helping create powerful messages for social entrepreneurs, social enterprises, even nonprofits and other organizations, helping them get their message out in a way that is efficient and effective. And I think there's more to be had there, because I think that even startup social entrepreneurs need those tools. So I'm sure there is a way to, you know, start helping them get that from the get-go so that they can do it the right way from the beginning.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming it's not just always the same way everyone else does it. There's more than one ways to do something.
It depends on your mission, your vision, your purpose, and your spark. Like, to go back to that, like, find your spark.
I love that. Thank you. And that's a great advice for anyone is a social entrepreneur or is thinking of becoming one. Find your spark. That's even what brought me here. When I transitioned from just working with training and supporting entrepreneurs and specifically more into social entrepreneurs, because that's where the spark was for me. It wasn't just the business, which was great, but it was the business with a purpose. That got me excited. And, even my own consultants and coaches were like, you should be doing this because your lights kind of come on when you get involved in this. And I'm like, I know I should be. So that's how that happened. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today, Sophie. We've got so many other things we could talk about. We'll have to have you back at some point in the future. And thank all of you viewers for tuning in today here on Global Socialpreneurs. You can find out more about us. You can find out more about our forum, which is a wonderful place to hang out with other social entrepreneurs, or even if you're not a social entrepreneur and you want to learn more, come to our twice monthly meetings. It's a highly energized and fun space of sharing and really the energy of making the world a better place. You can find out more about that on our website, globalsocialpreneurs.com. And as always, please tune in again next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific and noon Eastern Standard Time for our streaming show. Thank you. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Bye-bye.
Bye.